start recording as well, so hopefully all that will work. So, and we'll wait for other people to connect. Hopefully they can. If not, then let's hope I can share the recording. So, thank you so much for connecting to the Ayurveda for Immunity webinar. My name is Julia, as you know, and I'm an Ayurvedic practitioner and herbalist. So why Ayurveda for Immunity? Ayurveda has so much to offer us at times like this, times that we're going through right now. And as much as wonderful as modern medicine is, I think a lot of people are realizing that we need also to increase our health by looking at our lifestyle, looking at what we eat, looking at the use of spices, the right exercise, the right daily regimes. There is no substitute for that. This is so important. So, especially at times like that, when at times of uncertainty, when we're going through a lot of physical, emotional, mental uncertainty, as both as individual humans and as societies as well, globally, worldwide. So, Ayurveda for Immunity, here we go. So firstly, I would like, so I'll tell you what we're going to talk about today. I'll tell you broadly what Ayurveda is, and then I'll talk about the main concepts of Ayurveda, so that you understand the main theories of Ayurveda and how it all gels together. We will also talk about an Ayurvedic concept called ojas. You might have heard about it before or not, but ojas is the substance, physical and subtle substance that directly relates to immunity in our body, directly relates to our longevity. And it is said in Ayurveda that once the ojas is used up, our life finishes. So then we will talk about what Ayurveda has to offer us for immunity in terms of our food and diet, in terms of use of spices, in terms of daily regimes, and in terms of Ayurvedic therapeutic preparations, both general approach for boosting our immunity and also how to deal with colds and flu symptoms, which is particularly topical right now. We will also talk about mental and emotional immunity. That's very important as well. We will do 1 or 2 meditations. Let's see how we go for time. So Ayurveda. I hope you can see the screen. So what is Ayurveda? Ayurveda is the oldest scientific medical system in the world. Ayurveda is part of the Vedic body of knowledge, initiated in India, and India has been a custodian of Ayurveda for a long time. However, Ayurveda does not only belong to India. Ayurveda is, it is believed that Ayurveda was given by God to the whole of humanity, and Ayurveda is becoming more and more prevalent now and becoming more and more popular as people are looking for alternative ways, proven traditional scientific ways to improve the health and to increase longevity and to lead a better quality life as well. So Ayur means life, specifically life in a human body, not in a dog body, not in another body, but in a human body like you and me have, from the first breath to the last breath. And Veda means knowledge, science, or wisdom. So Ayurveda can be translated as knowledge of life. Sometimes it's called the art of living. So you get the idea. Ayurveda is more than 6,000 years old. And Vedas teach us that that Brahma, the creator God, handed it over to the earth through a god called Indra, who is the sun god, who then handed it over to the disciples, sages, and saints of the old days. And Vedas teach us that in the older days, human memory, humans could access vast body of knowledge without needing to write it down. So human memory was much bigger than what we have today. So Ayurveda initially was an oral tradition. It was spoken to the disciples in shlokas or poetic form, and they would remember it. And now, of course, we can't. So whenever the humans started losing that ability to memorize straight away, the scholars of the old days recorded Ayurveda in the scientific texts. So now we know three main scientific texts of Ayurveda, which is Charaka Samhita, Sushruta Samhita, and Ashtanga Hridaya. So anybody who broadly studied Ayurveda in any shape or form would have heard these texts. They're still used to date. And by every Ayurvedic practitioner and every Ayurvedic doctor and every Ayurvedic scholar, and still very much applicable to our today's life. So in the older days, Ayurveda as a medicinal science was concerning internal medicine, surgery, pediatrics, toxicology, psychiatry, the science of rejuvenation, ear, nose, throat, and aphrodisiac sciences. Of course, nowadays, most Ayurvedic practitioners don't practice surgery. So that became the domain of the modern medicine. However, when I was in India once and went to an Ayurvedic college, so that you know, in India there's a degree Bachelor of Ayurvedic Medicine and Surgery. So all graduates of, it's called BMS, so all graduates of BMS actually have to perform surgery and have to deal with cadavers and stuff like that. So it's quite a comprehensive degree. So nowadays, Ayurveda is mainly practiced as an allied medicine, and it teaches us about an appropriate lifestyle, nutrition, herbal medicines. Ayurveda also focuses heavily on body work and a therapeutic detox called panchakarma, and also rejuvenation. Ayurveda pursues two main goals. The first one is to preserve health, and the second one is to alleviate the suffering by curing the disease. And then Ayurveda also adds to that to preserve health and to alleviate the disease so that an individual can achieve moksha or liberation or higher realization or higher consciousness. Ayurveda is the science that quite simply states that there is a human, but there's also the creator. So Ayurveda has a spiritual aspect to it as well. Now, one thing that I would like also to add is that Ayurveda is considered the mother of all medicine on this planet. The current modern medicine, for example, surgery that's performed in modern medicine takes its root in Ayurveda. The Ayurvedic texts were translated and then enhanced, and now we have modern surgery. Chinese medicine, for example, takes its root in Ayurveda. So Ayurvedic, Indian, Vedic scholars, when they migrated, they moved to China, and traditional Chinese medicine eventuated. So anything good that you're doing for your health would be Ayurvedic. Because Ayurveda, there's no other way around it. Ayurveda is the only truth, health-wise, for humans at this stage of our evolution. So anything good that you're doing for your health would be Ayurvedic, whether you call it Ayurvedic or not, whether you know it or not. And anything not good for your health that you're doing would not be Ayurvedic, would be damaging to your health. So this is a quick overview of Ayurveda. And now we're going to talk about the main theories of Ayurveda, which is the theory of the 5 elements. It's called Panchamahabhuta, and we will also talk about the theory of the three doshas. So I don't know if you can see the full screen. So we'll do it like that. Can you guys all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
So the 5 elements theory of Ayurveda. Ayurveda as a universal science teaches us the truth of as above, so below. In modern language, microcosm and macrocosm, right? Or the holographic principle of the universe. So that all is reflected in the 5 element theory. Pancha is 5, Maha is great, Bhuta is element, right? Pancha Maha Bhuta. So the first element is Akash or ether. In the human body or space, right? The universe needs space to exist, otherwise it all goes through a black hole, and I'm not a cosmologist, but you get the idea. So does our human body. Human body needs space to exist externally and internally as well. So our stomach needs space for food to drop, right? Our intestines need space to digest the food. Our veins need space, our bones need space, etc., etc. So too much space in the body is not good. It becomes too much. Too little space, congestion. For example, too little space, your intestines contract and you get constipation problems, as simple as that. So not too much, not too little, but the right proportion. People with predominance of a space element tend to be philosophers, tend to be thinkers, tend to be taller than other people, tend to be within themselves, introverted. The next element is air or vayu. Vayu is actually translated from Sanskrit as a wind. So the wind is quick, cold, mobile. So and so is the element of air, both externally and internally. In our body, this element is represented by any kind of movement, whether it's the movement of neurotransmitters and our nervous system reacting and the synapses all firing up, or the movement of food and peristalsis. Also our thoughts. So any movement in the body is governed by the element of air. Too much air in our body, there is a phrase called, spacey or space cadet, right? So too much leads to nervous system aggravations, to dryness. The person becomes erratic, constipated, dry skin. So you get the idea. So again, we need to bring the element of air into balance. Now the element of fire or Agni is, so as the elements progress, they become more and more gross. So the element of earth is subtle, then the element of air becomes a little bit denser, the element of fire is even more dense. So Agni is transformation. As much as fire is transforming our food externally, right, when you cook it, our inner fire is transforming food, emotions, mental impressions, information. So fire wants to change the world. Fire wants to change our food. So in our body, in a physical level, the element of fire is represented by the enzymes and our digestive system, liver function. So the liver is considered to be the seat of fire in our body. Too much fire, we get acidity, inflammations, and other uncomfortable things. Now the element of water or jal, the element of water in our body we need lubrication, we need our blood to flow, we need the synovial fluid in the joints to work. So the element of water is necessary for us to exist. People with predominance of the element of water tend to be emotional, loving, caring. A lot of mothers, motherly figures would have a strong element of water, both in their physical, but also in their psychic composition. And the last element, the most gross element, is the element of earth, or prithvi. So the element of earth is represented in our body by the right balance of minerals. It gives us stability, it governs our skeleton, it governs our muscle tissue, and generally people with predominance of the element of earth are very structured, they're good managers. Too much is not good, too little is not good either. So that's a quick overview of the 5 elements, which Ayurveda teaches us that at the moment of conception, our Ayurvedic constitution, which is called Prakruti or Prakriti, is defined. And our constitution, you'll see the little chart underneath. So at the moment, ignore the gray parts of the chart. This is just an example, right? A visual example. You can tell I have a corporate background. So at the moment of conception, for each individual, these elements form certain proportions. So some people might have a predominance of air in their constitution, physical and mental. Some people fire, some people earth. From this chart, you can see that this person, the strongest element would be earth, the second strongest would be fire, for example. This is just to give you an example of individual's constitution at birth, or Prakriti, and how these elements interact with each other. So there is also an Ayurvedic concept of Vikruti, which means imbalance accumulated through life. And that's what the gray parts on the chart, if you're following me. So if you look at the chart, the air and fire, the gray elements, this just shows that you can accumulate through life imbalances in any element pretty much. There is a propensity in an individual to accumulate imbalances in the elements which are their natural tendency, so there is a propensity to do that, but that might not necessarily be the case, because our current lifestyle is very air dominated. It aggravates our air, it aggravates our nervous system. So it is believed pretty much that everybody nowadays, every single person has a vata imbalance or the air imbalance, right? So I hope that makes sense. Yeah. So moving on. So Ayurveda organizes these 5 elements into doshas. So I promise this insight into Ayurveda won't go for long, but it's important to grasp at least the main concepts of that before proceeding further. So the elements of ether, air, fire, water, and earth are organized. So Ayurvedic scholars have organized these elements into doshas, right? And the doshas are known as Vata, Pitta, Kapha. And what dosha actually is, one of the translations from Sanskrit is that which spoils. So why is it that which spoils? So essentially, our doshas give us a certain propensity, a certain inclination, a certain tendency to use both physical and mental, to use our energies in a certain way, to view the world in a certain way, to expend our energy in a certain way. And when we do more of the same, eventually it's the accumulation of doshas that causes ill health, decline, and death. Does it make sense? Yeah. So that's why it's very important from an Ayurvedic perspective to keep the doshas under control at all times, right? And very briefly, you'll get the slides, so you'll be able to read them. I wouldn't go through all this information, but very briefly, Vata dosha, which is composed of air and ether. So Vata dosha, again, just as the elements of air and ether, governs all movement in the body, peristalsis, neurotransmitters, the function of the nervous system, the function of the mind. So Vata individuals tend to be very mobile. Vata, air, moves, tend to be very mobile. They're very creative. They're great travelers, writers, dancers, very creative people, enthusiastic. Too much of Vata, people can become too erratic, nervous, anxiety, panic attacks, constipation, nervous disorders. So it's very important to keep the Vata under control. What also interestingly aggravates Vata is incessant information coming in. So things nowadays like social media, news, so that incessant drive for getting more and more information aggravates Vata. The next dosha is Pitta, which is the predominantly fire, but it also has some water. Strictly speaking, not water, but more like an oily substance, right? Because fire burns really very well when oils are added to it, like ghee or so Pitta is responsible for all transformations in our body, governs our enzymes, digestion, assimilation of food, and the key seat of Pitta is in our liver. Pitta individuals tend to be very ambitious. In the best manifestation of that, very transformative to the world, driving change in the world. Driving great ideas for the global or the communal or the societal good. So visionaries as well. In the worstest manifestation of Pitta, Pitta individuals can be aggressive, selfish, competitive, irritable, cutthroat. In the physical body, it can manifest as inflammations, ulcers, heartburn, high acidity, hot flushes, feeling too hot, etc. So that's Pitta. Now Kapha. Kapha is a dosha made up of the earth and water element, and the seat of the Kapha is in our lungs, because the lungs need a lot of water element and lubrication. That's why when we get colds and coughs, it is our lungs that produce the mucus, right? So it becomes particularly topical in autumn and winter, or at the times of any sort of epidemics, to look after our lungs. Kapha individuals, the best of the Kapha is a stable, emotionally, physically stable individual, very nurturing, very understanding, compassionate, grounded, stable. Too much of Kapha dosha in the body, accumulation of too much Kapha, leads to too much mucus, overweight, sluggishness, lethargy, laziness, heaviness, lying on the couch, greed, possessiveness, and depression is also interestingly linked to Kapha. If, for example, anxiety is linked to a Vata disorder, depression is generally linked to a Kapha disorder in the body and in the psyche, generally speaking. So that's a quick overview of the doshas. Moving on. And now we come to the topic of today, Ayurvedic view of immunity. So why some people get sick and others don't, being exposed to exactly the same environment, exactly the same viruses, and some people take quick to recover, and some people take ages to recover. Even with the current epidemic, as we know, with the virus that's going around, there are so many people that are asymptomatic or have very, very mild symptoms. Yet other people have to go to the hospital and develop full scale pneumonia and have to be on defibrillators, right? So Ayurveda gives us an answer to why that's happening. And the Ayurvedic view of immunity is called Bij Bhumi theory. Bij is a seed and Bhumi is a land. So the land has to be fertile with the right conditions or factors for the seed to grow. Similarly, in our body, any virus, when it lands in the body has to have fertile conditions to host that virus. So, and this fertile ground for the body to host that virus, in Ayurvedic terms, is called ama, A-M-A, ama, or toxicity. The Western view of ama generally is called endotoxins. So you see the photos of the tongue on the right? So there are two tongue photos. The easiest way for us to see ama in our body is actually on our tongue. The top picture of the tongue, you can see has minimum coating on it, and it looks like a very pink, healthy tongue. So looking at the tongue, this person would probably have minimum ama in their body. So you could see straight away that the person leads a generally very healthy lifestyle, right? And in my Ayurvedic practice, I do a lot of tongue diagnosis. So I rely on tongue and pulse diagnosis in my consultation. So that's something that's very close to me. And then you'll see the bottom picture of the tongue where there's like a yellow coating and there are cracks and there's like a fur growing and there's bald patchy areas and waves and etc. etc. So on our tongue, that substance on the tongue shows that the person has ama present in their system or toxicity. So on our tongue, if you can have a look in the mirror now or later, right, and then see broadly your own tongue. But that coating doesn't come from outside. It's actually pushed through our tongue. The blood pushes it through our tongue. So it's an indication from within. So, and what it indicates is that the digestive system, the intestines, the stomach, the large, small intestines are probably also covered, not probably, definitely, for the bottom picture, also covered with that ama or undigested food matter. And that undigested food matter has severe consequences for our health. And the consequences are that it accumulates in our body. It accumulates, it starts compromising our digestive fire or agni. It compromises the absorption, causes malnutrition, then it causes inflammation of the gut. It increases gut permeability. In the Western view, it's called leaky gut. And then through that increased permeability, it overflows from the gut to the weaker tissues and organs. So this is the flow of ama in the body. And Ayurveda also teaches us that once the person gets ama takes a life of its own. It starts producing more ama. It's like, it starts brewing and generating more of itself. So how is ama formed, and what is ama? So ama is basically undigested food matter or improperly cooked food in our body. Ama can be physical, mental, and emotional, right? So, and what causes ama? So in terms of immunity, ama is the key concept to grasp. So so how is ama formed? Number one, it's improper consumption habits, improper eating habits, both in terms of food, but also in terms of information and experiences, right? So improper eating habits don't only concern what you eat, but when, how, what, with what, how much, what time of day, what quality, is it cold, is it hot, etc., etc., and we'll come to that later. So ama is also caused by unprocessed emotional mental expressions. Interestingly, Ayurveda does not teach us that stress is bad, right? Ayurveda states that a little bit of stress can be actually mobilizing us into action, and it's not a bad thing. It's all a matter of how strong we are, how resilient we are, and how well we can digest it, right? Ama is also caused by improper daily regimes, late nights, improper exercise, lack of connection in nature, and I'm sure you can add a lot of things from your own experience here as well. Okay, now moving on. Any questions so far? If you have any questions, you can type in chat and I'll see them as well. So, and now we come. So we spoke about the 5 elements, about doshas. We spoke about the Ayurvedic view of immunity and ama, right? AMA, or toxins. And just the last couple of concepts before we actually move into the practical stuff. And the concept, the key concept concerning immunity in Ayurveda is called ojas. Have you heard, if you've heard about ojas, maybe type yes in the chat or put a plus or something. If you've heard about ojas, if no, then we'll leave it. Okay, beautiful. Okay, so what ojas is this. So Ayurveda teaches us, Ayurveda has a very different view of anatomy and physiology to the Western world. Okay, great. So what Ayurveda teaches us is this. Prana, or life force, has 2 routes to enter your body, right? Through the food or through the breath. And from the time it enters your body through food, for example, you eat something today, you have breakfast today, right? It takes roughly 45 days for that food to go through the full, to do the full cycle around your tissues and form ojas, right? And in terms of bodily tissues or dhatus, Ayurveda calls 7 of them. And it's important to understand in terms of ojas and immunity, only the final ones. So you don't need to remember all of that. This is more for illustrative purposes, right? So first, dhatu is plasma or rasa. Then that food substance flows through the blood to the muscles, to the fat tissues, feeds the bones. Then it feeds the nervous system and the bone marrow. And ultimately, after 45 days, it feeds the reproductive fluids called shukra in Ayurveda. And it's the essence that reaches shukra that's directly related to ojas, or it's the end result of the tissue metabolism. It's the subtle essence of all the tissues in the body, right? And naturally speaking, if your digestive power is low, both your digestion in the gut, but also your tissue digestive power is low, then your organs will be compromised. So it takes 45 days to feed the shukra is directly related to organs. So it takes 45 days for the organs to be formed in our body. The substance of organs is directly related to our immunity, our longevity, strength, vigor, stamina, fortitude, stability, our centeredness, our ability to be centered and not to be flustered by the emotions of others or by whatever's happening in the world, our resilience to diseases, ability to recover, ability to reproduce. It protects us from cancer, autoimmune diseases, and a lot of other things. So that's the substance called orges. That's key to maintain in your body for good immunity. It is also said in Ayurveda that it's both physical and subtle substance. So it has both in it. And the closest in the physical world that you can think of is ghee. And that's the picture that you see here, right? Ghee or clarified butter is known as ambrosia in Ayurveda. And that's the closest in quality to the orges. Ghee or honey, these kind of substances directly feed the orges in the body, provided there is not a lot of ama and your digestive power is optimal, right? Now, what depletes orges in the body? So orges is lost through eating bad food, dead food, processed food, you name it, by the use of stimulants, including coffee and coke, by emotions like worry, stress, fear, strong anger, sorrow, grief, shallow breathing. Orges is lost through excessive thinking, overthinking, incessant thinking. Interestingly, as we spoke before, orges is directly related to shukra or the reproductive fluids, and orges leaks very powerfully through excessive sexual activity as well. In fact, Ayurveda gives a guideline, an interesting guideline for sexual activity for humans, which is about once a month. So orges is also lost through such experiences and events as shock, trauma, surgeries, or serious illnesses. Interestingly, Ayurveda teaches us that orges is lost through hunger. And here, what it actually means is it's not, so Ayurveda uses the word hunger, but I would translate it into the word greed. Greed for experiences, greed for information, not being incessantly working, not being able to stop, to sit down, to enjoy nature, to feel your body, go into your body, and process everything that's going on in your world. Make sense? So orges is lost through drugs, especially the heroin type drugs. Orges is lost through unstable mind, feeble, unstable, scattered mind. And orges is also weakened at birth when the baby is born without parental love, right? So that's what Ayurveda teaches us. When the person has self-perception as a loser, a low self-esteem, and unwillingness to bear the trials of destiny. There are two types of orges. White orges, which protects and restores DNA and is related to our ability to reproduce, related to our longevity and immunity. White orges, in my understanding, cannot be replenished. Once the white orges is used up, the person dies. That's that. And there is red ojas that can be replenished through the right food, which comes into which through prana, which comes from food and breath, and from Shakti, which can be done from certain yogic practices or meditation practices or spiritual practices. So red oja, it's better for us to go through red ojas and have a store of it in our body, because once the red ojas is depleted, then the body starts tapping into the white ojas and take from there, and the white ojas cannot be replenished. Once it's gone, that's it. The life's finished. Make sense? If you have any questions, just type them up, or you can unmute yourself and let me know as well. Okay, so I have a question for all of you. We've started a little bit late, so are you okay to go a little bit over time?
Yes, we started late.
Yeah.
So we can
Okay.
go longer.
Okay, great. So what I would like to do now, before we go into the practical side, so this was all theory. So we spoke about Ayurveda, we spoke about the 5 elements, the doshas, ama, and ojas. What I would like to do now, before we go into the practical part of how to keep our immunity and what to practically do, is to do a little short meditation with you on the ojas, right? If you're okay with that. And that would be a good practice. Chats connected. Great. So we'll do a short meditation now. So what I would like you to do is to sit straight. And close your eyes and make sure you see that your spine is straight and erect. And take a breath in. And close your eyes. Focus on your breath. Breathe in. And breathe out all tensions in your body, in your physical body. Land into your physical body. Take a breath in, and with breathing in, breathe in the golden rays of the rising sun. And let these rays of the rising sun ignite your Agni, your digestive power, your power to digest food, and your power to digest life. Our Agni, or our digestive power, is directly related to the sun. And now take another breath in and perceive that your whole body is covered with a thin layer of ghee or clarified butter, warm and comfortable layer of ghee all around your body. And on top of that layer of ghee, there is another layer of pure golden honey. And as you breathe in, the power of your Agni your digestive power transforms the layer of ghee and honey around your body into a band of golden light radiating through a whole aura. Strengthening, building your immunity, giving you vigor and stamina. Breathe in the golden light radiating from ghee and honey through your whole aura and your physical body and all your subtle bodies. This is the substance that repairs your DNA. This is the substance that sustains your life, your ojas, and it is directly related to your immunity. Take a few breaths. And when you are ready, feel yourself sitting on the chair. Wiggle your fingers and toes and open your eyes. So you can stay in that state and keep listening. And we will move on now. So now we're coming to the practical ways of keeping our immunity. We spoke about our Agni and digestive fire and how important it is for us not to allow the formation of AMA, or toxins or endotoxins in our gut. So they don't accumulate, they don't damage our gut, they don't overflow to the rest of the body, right? So how do we achieve that? Through food. The first principle of Ayurveda, there are two main principles in Ayurveda, which are linked to each other. And these principles are this following the sun and also the principle of time, right? So our Agni, or our digestive power, follows the sun. What that means is when the sun is high up, our digestive power is high. We can digest more and bigger food and heavier foods. When the sun is down, our digestion goes down. So if your largest meal is in the evening, there's pretty much nothing else you can do but start accumulating armor over years, weeks, months, and years, right? So conclusion from here is that the main meal should be during the day, between 12 and 2 p.m., the largest meal of the day. And dinners should always be light, right? Next principle of food. Ayurveda favors warm, cooked meals with appropriate oils over raw, rough, fermented, and heavy. Now you might ask here, what about salads, right? Salad is considered healthy, and raw foods and whatever else. So from an Ayurvedic perspective, Ayurveda has a very clear view on that. So raw food Yes, raw food might, for example, might contain 100% of nutrition, right? And cooked food might contain, I don't know, 50, 60% of nutrition, because some of the nutrients get destroyed in the process of cooking, right? However, our digestive power, especially when it's down, especially when we're older, especially when we have health conditions, especially when we're worried or stressed, especially in seasons like autumn and winter, our digestive power is not the best. And for our digestion, our enzymes to penetrate the cells of the raw food and break them down is very, very hard. So we can only extract a very small proportion of nutrients from raw food, is number one. And number two, raw food aggravates our nervous system. Raw cold foods aggravate the nervous system. While it's much, much easier for our digestive power to extract nutrients from warm cooked meals, which pacify our nervous system. And the likelihood to absorb and assimilate that food is exponentially higher. Make sense? Next point. Do not nibble on food or eat before the previous meal is digested. What that means is have a proper breakfast, have a proper lunch, and a small dinner. If you're not hungry in the evening, then just a little cup of soup or a warm cup of milk or something like that is fine. If you constantly nibble, Ayurveda is opposing the popular tendency to eat every hour. I don't know what this pattern of eating is called formally, but there is a tendency to eat small meals every 1.5 to 2 hours, right? Sometimes when the person loses weight, etc. Ayurveda is directly opposing that, because this is a pathway, that eating pattern is a pathway to lower your digestive fire and to form armor. There's no other way around it. Because there's a blob of food sitting in your stomach and it's getting cooked and digested by the juices and enzymes and acid. So it's in one stage of digestion, right? And then you're throwing on top of it another morsel of food, another load of food, and which will be at a different stage of digestion, and they simply cannot be digested properly. So this is not, if you want an eating pattern conducive to your health, this is not it. So do not constantly nibble on food. Do not eat before the previous meal is digested, is the key for the body not to form armor. Have a good meal and then have a good 2-3 hour break. You can have a little snack in 2-3 hours. Say, for example, you have breakfast at 8 a.m., then at 10:30 you can have some fruit, then have lunch at 1 p.m., for example. That's fine, but constantly nibbling is not a good way. Do not eat when anxious, upset, angry, or in a fight or flight response, because your parasympathetic system is not activated. The blood is flowing to the muscles, from the brain, from the stomach, and the food in the stomach will not be digested properly. The next point is very, very important. Chew well. We're always in a rush. We chew a little bit and then we swallow it. And this eating pattern is a direct pathway to pancreatic problems and gallstones and liver problems. Direct pathway. And I can guarantee that any person who's got pancreatic or problems with liver, gallbladder stones, does not chew. The reason for it is that our saliva has an enzyme called amylase, and about 30% of starch, sugar, or cup digestion occurs in our mouth. And if it doesn't occur, then it puts extra load on the pancreas and gallbladder. Right? So chew well. The guideline is 32 times. All right. So next, Inappropriate food combinations, which you can read in the slides. I'll send you the slides. Inappropriate food combinations will throw your Agni and will create Ama. The most popular ones from the list are probably yogurts with bananas, milkshakes, eating hot and cold food together, milk sauces for fish, omelets with cheese and eggs. Not a good idea from an Ayurvedic perspective. Now, drinking liquids. Warm water is better than cold water, simply because it opens the channels and flushes Ama away from the body. So constantly sipping warm water is a good idea. However, it's not great to drink straight before or after a meal because it dilutes our digestive juices. But sipping warm water during a meal is okay. The worst drinking idea is probably cold fizzy drinks during a meal. It will directly dampen your digestion, like sparkling water, cold lemonades and stuff like that will directly kill your digestion. And lastly, do not exercise 2 hours after a meal. Right, so that's food. Ayurveda also has a concept, make food thy medicine, through the use of kitchen herbs and spices, which help us directly to digest the meal and reduce Ama formation. Good spices to add to your meals are ginger, turmeric, fennel, fenugreek, cumin, coriander. They're all good digestive spices. Spices that go well with sweet meals are cinnamon, cardamom, cloves. And a spice less known called hing or asafoetida is a must spice to add to lentils because it helps us to process the protein in lentils, prevent bloating, and increase assimilation. It's great to garnish with fresh herbs, powders, or pre-roast seeds. There's one particular spice called saffron, which directly increases our ojas and immunity and our vitality. Saffron is indicated for things like fertility, chronic fatigue, autoimmune conditions, Hashimoto's, RA, lupus, and HIV. A good way, well, saffron should never be boiled. Saffron should be added to warm water and milk and just let it sit for a while, and then it can be consumed that way. It can be added to, for example, Ayurvedic chai, rice, drinks, up to your imagination. Saffron, Ayurveda also states that saffron in large quantities is a poison, but you will not be able to do that because it's very, very expensive. Good saffron is very, very expensive. So if you buy a lot of it, make sure you don't take it all at the same time. A good guideline is 3 to 4 strands per consumption. With spices, be cautious in pregnancy, particularly if pregnancy is generally not a good time to start anything new at all. So if the person is not used to spices, pregnancy is not the time to experiment. Right? Pregnancy is time to maintain the lifestyle that was before. It's not the time to detox. Now, good recipe is a seasonal detox drink. I'll skip through that. I'll just say a couple of things here and I'll skip through that and you'll get the recipe. So right now, it's a good idea for us to do an autumn recipe. So you take 3 liters of water, you add the named spices to it, and then you boil it, a decoction, until it's reduced into half. You drain and you store it, and then you take 1/3 of that decoction in a glass and add 2/3 of warm water and drink that drink for 2 weeks, right? So it's a good way to make sure our Agni is optimal and we digest our Ama, and a good gentle detox that almost doesn't have any contraindications at these quantities. Right, moving on. So now Ayurvedic spices for colds and flu. Spices like ginger, cardamom, clove, cinnamon, cumin, black pepper, turmeric, good spices to stock up on, particularly with any cold and flu viruses that seem to be going around. So if you can't, with ginger, for example, if you can't buy fresh, buy dry, just buy whatever you can and experiment with it. You can add it into your food, or you can make teas as well. And some ideas of how to use the spices are these ones. So firstly, ginger, lemon, honey tea. Even if you don't take anything out of this slide, take ginger, lemon, and honey tea. Ginger is a powerful digestive. It helps our body to get rid of extra mucus. And if you grate half a teaspoon of fresh ginger with, and mix it with lemon juice and boiling water, and then later on add raw honey. Raw means unheated honey, not heated over 40 degrees, because then it becomes poisonous, as we know. So, and drink this drink first thing in the morning on an empty stomach and throughout the day. It not only helps your body to process the toxicity or Ama, prevents many diseases, but it also helps deal with viruses and infections as well, right? So ginger, turmeric, and cumin is a good idea for tea as well. You can mix ginger with cinnamon and lemongrass. With ginger, again, as I said, caution in pregnancy, and caution if a person's on blood thinning medications like warfarin as well. A good tea is ginger, cinnamon, and cardamom. If a person has a sore throat, gargling with warm water, salt, and turmeric a few times a day is a must. Now, in terms of the current virus that's going around, it's a good idea, if you can tolerate it and you have to work or go out, to suck on a clove pod all the time. When you start sucking on it, it tastes pretty strong, right? But the essential oils from clove will be released into your throat and act as a protective barrier to a degree. And a similar action is with cardamom, but cardamom also has a great affinity for lungs. Clove has an affinity for throat, and cardamom has a great affinity for lungs, strengthening the lungs. So I personally would do clove, just suck on a clove pod all the time. A good remedy for sore throat is mixing turmeric, black pepper, and honey as well. So now moving on. Daily regimes to build immunity. Daily regimes in Ayurveda are called Dinacharya, daily action, Dina day, Charya action, daily action. And number one is sleep, right? So we spoke about following the path of the sun, following the sun. So sleep is of paramount importance, and the time of the sleep is of paramount importance. So sleep, going to bed between 9 and 10 p.m. and getting up before sunrise, the latest between 5 and 6 a.m. Is the Rolls Royce, right? If you're looking at that and you're observing that in your life, congratulations. If you're looking at that and you're thinking, no way, I'm a night owl, then not as much so. You know, Ayurveda has a very clear view on the night owls, and Ayurveda states that generally speaking, there is no night owls as such. It's a weight of the past karmas and inappropriate actions, both physical, mental attitudes that created that distortion, right? It's a distortion. If the person that is not asleep between 10 and 12 p.m., then over time, and there is no other way around it, over time, the person will develop fatigue, physical, psychological health, willpower, interestingly, will be depleted, cognition will be depleted, decision-making will be depleted, the person will have stronger desire for inappropriate actions, like eating the wrong foods, doing the wrong things for their health. And yeah, so now why getting up before sunrise? Again, following the sun. If we don't, the body overheats, our hormonal functions suffer, conception problems, depression, lethargy, lack of mental clarity, all these kind of things set in. Make sense? No? Now, next, so sleep. The timing of the sleep is very, very important. You also, just a couple of more things on sleep. Those of you that have heard about the term Brahma Muhurta, right? Different Ayurvedic schools define it differently, but generally speaking, the consensus is that the period of Brahma Muhurta is 3 hours or 3.5 hours before sunrise. Some schools state it's 1.5 hours. So the Brahma Muhurta time is particularly conducive, the time before sunrise is particularly conducive to spiritual activities like meditation, prayer, pranayam, and it also, my mentor, Dr. Claudia Welsh, also interestingly states that that time corresponds to our karmas, pre-birth and early childhood. That getting up at that time and performing certain sadhanas or practices will help us to process our karmas and our early childhood patterns or traumas much more effectively. Now, the next regime that we're moving to is exercise. Correct movement of the body for the body type is a must. For most people, the correct movement is alternation, not in one go, but in different days of the week, of static exercises, such as yoga, and dynamic exercises, such as jogging, fast walking, cross-trainer. Yoga exercises are great for pacifying the nervous system, dynamic for decongestion of the body, removing stagnation. Swimming, for example, is also very good for hormonal functions of the body, as water has a direct affinity for hormones. Or key with exercise is regularity, not intensity. So Ayurveda does not favor intense exercises as they deplete the body, but consistent and regular exercise, if you want to be healthy, is a must. 2-3 times a week, minimum, depending on what you're doing. The next daily regime is self-abhyanga. Abhyanga is oleation massage. So oleating your own body yourself with or professional treatments, when they become possible again. So self-abhyanga is self-massage, self-oleation of the body with Ayurvedic herbal oils and performing self-massage. And what actually happens when you put Ayurvedic oils on your body is, as we age, our cells, the cells of our body shrivel, our colloidal matter becomes within our cells, and all the mitochondria become sticky, gluey, stick together, kind of that shriveled apple syndrome. And the oils have an ability to penetrate through the cell, open it up. The toxin will start flowing out. And the cells will be healthier. And self-oleation promotes detox, circulation, usefulness, supports nervous system. Best Ayurvedic oil specifically for immunity are Bala Ashwagandha oil, Mahanarayani oil, then Vancham oil, Vata oil. If in any doubt, it's always best to get professional advice. Black sesame oil is a good generic oil for everybody. And coconut oil is good in summer, or for pitta constitutions, as it's believed to be cooling for the body. Oil should be applied to the whole body in warm oils before a bath or a shower, and then washed off, as they have an ability to draw the toxicity out of the body. Yeah. Next, daily practices to build immunity also involve daily mindful diaphragmatic breathing. We spoke about the prana, and then how prana flows through the tissues and ultimately forms ojas in 45 days. So daily mindful diaphragmatic or abdominal breathing increases the prana flow in your body. Interestingly, it also helps our body to produce the happy hormones, serotonin, dopamine. So this, and diaphragmatic or abdominal breathing is a must before any other pranayama practices are attempted, right? So that must be observed in most other pranayamic practices. Another Ayurvedic daily practice to build immunity is an application of Ayurvedic Anathilam oil into the nostrils as well. Now, a little bit about Ayurvedic therapeutic preparations for immunity. A wonderful Ayurvedic therapeutic preparation for immunity is Chawan Prash, which is a herbal jam with honey. It's got from 30 to 50 different herbs, depending on the recipe, and directly increases immunity, resistance, increases protection from bacterial, viral infection, improves recovery time, supports lungs, is a respiratory tonic, and it's recommended for anybody over 40 to take it as a course of 3 months, once or twice a year. I do. And and another thing about Chavan Prash, it's the substance that directly increases ojas. And there is a legend about Chavan Prash which goes like this. And a sage called Chavan was rather elderly, and he fell in love with a young maiden. With a young girl, and he wanted to marry her, but he was quite elderly, so being a sage or a saint, he came up with Chavan Prash recipe, which gave him usefulness, and then he married that girl, and they lived happily ever after. So, and that feeds into our previous conversation about ojas and the reproductive tissues and the immunity. So I'll leave it at that. Another beautiful Ayurvedic herb and preparation is guduchi. Guduchi is a herb. Another word for guduchi is amrita. And a preparation made of guduchi, which is amrit arishta, which is a rather nice preparation. And that herb rejuvenates and strengthens and is a great immune support. Other great herbs for immunity are ashwagandha and ashwagandha preparations, ashwagandha leham and ashwagandha rishtam, dashamula rishtam and dashamula kashayam, bala rishta and brahma rasayana. So they are good generic preparations to build immunity. And Ayurvedic preparations for colds and flu specifically are those. There's a beautiful herb called tulsi, or holy basil, and if you can see it, I've got a little tulsi plant here in my hand. So tulsi is one that you can buy, even tulsi tea and stuff like that. Another word is holy basil or tulasi. And Ayurveda takes tulsi as a very sacred plant. So tulsi, apart from many other beautiful qualities, strengthens our lungs and our immunity. A herb called pipali, or long pepper, helps us to deal with mucus, both in our digestive system and in our lungs. Yasti madu, which is licorice, strengthens our lungs. Amalaki, or amla, is a powerful antioxidant and contains vitamins, a lot of vitamin C. And pushkaramul, kalme, guduchi, and vasa are good generic support for immunity, lungs, coughs, colds, and stuff like that. Out of therapeutic preparations for colds and flu, the ones that are more widely available are trikatu, sitapaladi churna, and talisadi churna, and the rest of the list. But I would recommend for you to seek a professional advice before, and not to self-prescribe any of those. But they are a great assistance if you need to recover from a bad cold, flu, or virus quickly, including the current virus that's going around. I would strongly recommend that. Right. Now, crystals and minerals for immunity. Crystals and minerals that promote ojas directly are, interestingly, black diamond, yellow topaz, obsidian, and also golden platinum. I personally also really love golden sheen obsidian as well. Crystals that help the body to deal with infections, fatigue, fever are amber, amethyst, ametrine, citrine, emerald, fluoride, moss agate. Crystals like red jasper, shungite, and amber strengthen our physical channels. Crystals great for throat, any throat problems, are blue lace agate, larimar, lapis, and amber. As you can see, amber is one of my personal favorites. It's everywhere here. And if you look closely at amber, you will see even that the look of amber is very similar to the look of ghee. It's like solidified ghee, right? Helps strengthen our physical body. It's got that ghee or honey substance to it. So, yeah, I really love amber, and it has a great effect on our physical body and strengthening it, increasing our immunity. And it's even popular, and even popular for kids as well. The teething amber necklaces for kids. So now is a good time to wear amber. You can charge it and even better. So, and lastly, we're going to talk about emotional and mental immunity before we finish up. So we spoke about physical digestion, but also about our emotional and mental digestion. I can hear a bit of noise, so I think I'm making somebody. Yeah. And lost it. Okay. So emotional and mental immunity. there are Sanskrit notions as dhi, dhariti, and smriti. And what that means is, number one, when the information or knowledge comes into our life in the form of dhi, if we don't turn it into action, if we don't process its necessity and usefulness and practicalness in our lives, and if we don't turn it in through action into our habits, right, or remembrance, it doesn't become part of our internal inner wisdom. It, in fact, the more knowledge we accumulate without applying it in our lives, the more ballast or mental and emotional toxicity we accumulate. So it's very, very important to apply what you learn, and then to make a habit out of it. And that acts as an emotional and mental immunity buffer in your body. Partly that's related to modern psychological concept of, and you might have heard about it, of goes like this: you don't know what you don't know, so you are unconsciously incompetent, right? Then you become aware that maybe I don't know something and I need to learn it. Then you become consciously incompetent, so now you consciously know that you don't know. The next step is where you learn to assimilate it, where you learn the concept, right? So now you know, for example, that you shouldn't be going to bed late. So you become unconscious, you become consciously competent, right? So you consciously now know that you shouldn't be going to bed late, but you still do. It's not a habit yet. And the last step is you become unconsciously competent. So your habit is formed and it becomes part of your unconscious day-to-day living. So that's a similar concept, dhi, dhriti, and smriti. And lastly, so mental and emotional digestion of informations, events, and life is extremely important. It's extremely important not to overload ourselves with information. Because even modern science and modern research confirms that when we watch or witness a traumatic event, whether it's on news or on Facebook or wherever else, our body produces the same hormones, the same neurotransmitters, as though we are living it ourselves, right? So it directly lowers our immunity. So limiting exposure is very important. It's also very important for us to take time to process these events. You can take time in meditation. You can take time by just sitting on the couch and having a cup of tea. You can take your time with the counselors. There's a lot of options, but taking time is extremely important. Shoving it in the corner of your psyche is probably not the most effective solution. However, Ayurveda says that yes, if you're weak, you can do that until a better time, right? But there still will be a time when you'll need to deal with it. And lastly, the only antidote to our current world is slow living. And it's interesting how we're all forced now to a slower living. So maybe partly or fully it's a blessing in disguise what's happening now as well, so that we can all investigate our inner landscapes, re-examine how we live, where our values sit, and how do we approach ourselves, our health, life. So that's probably all I want to share with you today. If you have any questions, you can unmute yourself and ask me, or you can type them in.